we have to talk about the move to featherweight, obviously. You said about going to Liverpool to get the DEXA scan and stuff. Were you said that the last few weight cuts were pretty tough. Obviously, you never missed, and it never really came to my mind that it was something you would be thinking about, because even though, like you said, they were tough, it never seemed close, obviously, from what we saw from the outside. But how convinced were you that that was going to be kind of what came out of the DEXA scan?
Um, I sort of had it in my, we sort of almost had it in our mind going up to Liverpool. I was kind of like, I think I'm going to have to go to featherweight. And then all the depths of scan did pretty much was set it in stone.
Mm.
When you've got scientists and professionals, sitting you down and saying you're going to do serious damage to yourself if you keep doing this, you can't keep, because it wasn't a case of like, if I tighten up my diet a bit, it's doable. They kind of say, look, this is your weight now. This is how much body fat you've got to lose. You know, for you to then cut water and muscle weight from there to get that serious damage, not only to your performance but to your health. So when you've got scientists and professionals telling me that, it's just kind of like, right, well, they're not they got no reason. It doesn't make no difference to them whether I go to featherweight or not. They're just telling
Mm.
me what the readings and what the science is showing them. So when you're told by someone like that, you kind of sit there and think, right, I don't. If something either happens in the cage, you kind of know what you're signed up for. But I'd rather not have something serious happen in the sauna or in the bath in order to make weight for a fight and then not be able to fight. So it was just kind of like, well, this is what it is. We got two options now. We either ignore what they say, or we take it on board and work with them to make sure that I'm doing all the right things that I should be doing in order to be a successful featherweight.
Yeah, I think the reason it came as a surprise to a lot of people is because uh th there was such a big deal made out of you getting into the bantamweight top 15, like after slowly climbing through the ranks and stuff, and then kind of building your way up for UFC cards. That it felt like such a big push. And then obviously the loss to Ricky, uh, you said that you probably wouldn't have gone to featherweight if you'd won that fight, because it's easy to kind of make excuses and brush things aside when you're still winning. It's only when you have a loss like that that you really have to kind of look at things and kind of analyze things in that way. Does it feel like there's like a weight off your shoulders in that you have the opportunity to kind of reanalyze what you're doing and make some drastic changes?
Yeah, well, it's a new chapter. And it feels like this camp has felt completely different, like my last 5 or 6. I've all my work has pretty much been around skills and sparring and focusing on technique and on my opponent rather than just training that's going to help me cut the weight. Like
Mm.
I'm 12 or 13 days out now, whatever it is, and I'm still fully filled. I'm still able to do 3 sessions a day, full of energy and not have to like kind of ease off on certain areas because I've got a substitute that we usually do substituting that to make sure I can go and cut some weight. And it's like I've always did it well. I'm quite mentally strong, quite mentally tough, so I would never ever let on to anyone or anyone outside of the circle then that the weight was kind of draining me. But when you see some of the stuff I'm doing in the gym, and then I'm going in there my own head, and then on fight night, I know I'm not performing and not pulling off stuff to the full ability like I am in the gym when I'm not depleted. That's when I start to think, right, obviously someone's got to give you because the stuff I'm doing in the gym isn't necessarily always translating to the fight night. Although was still having good performances at bantamweight. It was just a case of I didn't feel like I had that sting in my punches. I didn't feel like I had that explosion. I feel like in the gym I could do 10 5-minute rounds if I had to, and then sometimes I go into a fight in the cage and the third round I feel like completely zapped, which isn't me at all. So something I had to give, and when we look at the science, that obviously that's where I was. I was just taking too much out of myself in the build up to be able to go out there and perform properly.
Yeah, you said about kind of how you've been able to spend more time training specifically for the opponent because you don't have to worry about the weight cut and stuff. I assume that without needing to go and do kind of more in-depth tape study that you'd seen Makwan Amirkhani fight a good few times, because he seems to always be on these London events like every single time. I feel like I've seen Makwan Amirkhani fight like at least 10 times in the UFC, because he's always on these cards, usually against a UK guy as well. So I assume you
Yeah.
already knew his game to some degree before the obviously a decent name for a featherweight debut as well.
Yeah, I've seen him fight. Like, I think we've shared a couple of cards, 2 or 3 cards. Like you say, he's been on the London cards. I've shared cards in Fight Island and stuff like that. So yeah, I've seen him. I've seen him fight a couple of times, and I know where he's good at before even considering moving up, or before even knowing I was going to fight him. So I know what he brings to the table. And yeah, he's been in there with some good guys, Arnold Allen and Barboza. People like Jonathan Pierre. He's been in it with Shane Burgos. He's been in it with Uzu. So there's when you're in the UFC, I think it says, I think 2014, something like that, he debuted. So you don't last that long in the UFC without being half decent. So yeah, it's a very good fight for me to start off with in the new division.
I'm gonna choose to ask this question now because I don't want to end the interview on like a criticism of something, because I live in Gloucester, so I live about an hour away from Cardiff, and I was so convinced we were getting the Cardiff show for Edward Usman. I thought it was going to happen. Obviously, it would be absolutely perfect for you. Potentially some of the other Welsh fighters on the roster. I was so convinced it was going to happen. What was your reaction to finding out it was going to be in London? Which I know we complain about that. People in the US have to travel far further in order to get to their local event. So I understand that it's a little bit, complaining when we should just be happy we've got a pay-per-view in London. But I really thought it was going to happen, and I'm so gutted it didn't.
Yeah, it was up and down. I think we first heard whispers of Cardiff before Christmas, and I was kind of one of them. I was like, there's no way they're going to do it in. There's no way they're going to do it in the Principality. And then after Christmas, then it started looking like a real possibility. Dana was coming out and saying stuff, and it was like, we might get it by here, but obviously it ended up being the O2. I think the weather. I know the Six Nations and stuff like that. They just must not have been able to get it done, but it would have been brilliant to have a card in Cardiff. But the our option would lead you to think that hopefully at some point, if Leon, especially if Leon wins now and he can set up a big pay-per-view fight against someone like Kobe or Masvidal, maybe, who knows, or Kamzat even, there's obviously the potential there in the future. But yeah, it was a little bit of a shame. I know a lot of the Welsh fans were gutted, but the O2 is still a good venue. Like you said, it's still a pay-per-view in the UK, and a 3-hour drive to London still isn't as far as a 12-hour flight to Vegas. So I can't complain too much.
Yeah, true. The final thing I wanted to touch on, because I think it was probably the first thing I ever spoke to you about, and I heard you mention it on your podcast the other day. You were talking about how some of the Welsh fighters need to make more use of IMAF, because I believe that's one of the first things me and you ever spoke about, was your kind of run through IMAF and how beneficial that was, because you must have been one of the first fighters that I knew of who went through that whole process. So I just wanted to kind of get your take on that more, and how younger fighters coming through, why they need to make more use out of it, and how beneficial it was to your career.
Yeah, well, I think it's fairly obvious. There's too many fighters out there, especially at amateur, who want to pad their records on shit shows, to be honest, and who want to be the guy with the 7-8 fight win streak, but don't necessarily want to fight the best opposition. My teammate Rowan Krochner, he's just gone out and had a silver medal at the Worlds. That makes him now European gold medalist, 4 Nations gold medalist, world silver medalist. I think his record's 15-2 or 15-3 as an amateur, and probably 10 of those opponent. He's just kind of been told, right, this is who you're fighting. And he's not only that, but he's been weight, and you've got to fight every single day. It's like an Olympic format, like you have with the Olympics. It's not like oh, I'll cherry pick this guy because he's got the best style, and I can win another nonsense belt to put on my trophy cabinet. You know, it doesn't mean anything. Like, you could have 10 small show belts, but none of them will really equate to an IMAF world medal or an IMAF gold medal. So if you generally believe you're the best amateur in Europe or the world, or even Britain now with the Four Nations, to get experience on. Of course there are, but I think ultimately if you Mikhail, who ended up getting UFC at 6-0 because he was three-time IMAF champion. You've got guys like Christian Duncan now, who's just signed for UFC, who was an IMAF. I think he was a world silver or bronze medalist. Those guys are all able to fight at such an high level now at pro so early in their career because they were tested as amateurs. You have guys who have 10 amateur fights and then they come unstuck in their third pro fight because they've never really had a 50-50 or a world-class level opponent. So if you are as good as you think you are, then get in the IMAF and test yourself, because it'll only do good for you then when you turn professional. Because when you get to UFC, you don't get to pick and choose your, well, most of us don't get to pick and choose our opponent. Some people do, but you know, you've got to fight when you're told, and that's what the IMAF does. It kind of breeds into that. Right, I don't gotta say, you know, this is who I'm fighting. Suck it up and get on with it. It's not just a physical test as well as a mental test. There's a lot more that goes into it rather than just getting in there and fighting a guy. So I think anyone who got aspirations of going all the way in the sport should be looking to test yourself at the IMAF.
Yeah, for sure. Couldn't agree with you more. Jack, so thank you so much for your time as always. You are always the easiest person in the sport to set up interviews with. So I appreciate that massively, mate, honestly. And all the best with the fight. And I'm sure we'll catch up with you not too long after.
Yes, top man. Thank you very much. And don't forget, follow the Tank That podcast on YouTube.
For sure. Nice one, mate. Have a good rest of your day.
Yes, buddy. See you soon.